April 12, 1945. The outskirts of Breitenbach, Germany. The air tastes of cordite and pulverized stone. For 3 days, the world has been shrinking, compressed into the narrow, rubble-choked streets of this forgotten town. For Corporal John Riley, a combat medic with Company B, 112th Infantry Regiment, 28th Infantry Division, the world is the man bleeding out at his feet. He ignores the rhythmic thump-thump-thump of a Browning M1919 spitting defiance from a second-story window down the lane. He ignores the sharp crack of returning Car 98K fire, the whine of ricochets off shattered brick. His focus is the field dressing, his fingers numb and clumsy inside blood-slicked gloves as he tries to pack a wound in a young private's thigh. The boy, a replacement from Ohio no older than 19, is staring at the gray, unforgiving sky, his lips moving in a silent prayer. You learn to compartmentalize. You have to. The sound of hobnail boots scrambling on loose debris is just background noise. The exhausted, desperate shouts of platoon leader Lieutenant Miller are just another instrument in the orchestra of battle. Riley finishes the dressing, wrapping it tight, applying pressure until the bright crimson slows to a sullen ooze. "You're gonna be fine, kid," he lies, his voice a low rasp. "Just hang on." He signals 2 litter-bearers who move with a practiced, weary urgency, their faces grim masks of dirt and fatigue. They haul the boy away, another piece of American youth fed into the grinding teeth of the Reich's final, agonizing collapse. The fight for Breitenbach is a microcosm of the war's end. It is not glorious. It is not strategic. It is a bitter, house-to-house affair against a desperate mix of Wehrmacht stragglers, folkstorm old men, and a handful of Hitler youth who fight with the terrifying ferocity of the truly indoctrinated. Every cellar door, every shattered window is a potential death trap. A Panzerfaust team had knocked out their lead Sherman tank 2 hours ago. Its blackened hulk now forms part of the barricade blocking the town square. This is the hard reality of victory. It is purchased 1 street, 1 building, 1 life at a time. Lieutenant Miller's voice cuts through the din. "Riley, on me. We're clearing this block. Last pocket of resistance is in that brewery." Miller points with a grimy finger toward a 3-story brick building, its facade pockmarked by machine gun fire. A tattered Nazi flag still hangs limply from a pole, an absurd splash of red against the monochrome destruction. Riley grabs his aid bag, the worn canvas heavy on his shoulder, and follows his lieutenant, his M1 Garand held at the ready. He is a medic, sworn to heal, but in this war, every man is a rifleman first. The breach is violent and sudden. A bazooka team blows the heavy oak doors off their hinges, and the first wave of GIs pours through the smoke, firing as they go. The fight inside is short, brutal, and loud. The acoustics of the large brewing hall amplify every gunshot, every shout, every scream, into a deafening crescendo. Riley stays near the entrance, his eyes scanning for the inevitable casualties. Within minutes, the firing subsides, replaced by guttural German shouts of "Kamerad, nicht schießen," "Comrade, don't shoot." They find them in the cavernous fermentation cellar, not a hardened SS unit, but a sorry collection of a dozen soldiers. A few grizzled veterans, their faces etched with the harsh lines of the Eastern Front, a few pale-faced boys who look barely old enough to shave, and among them, a woman. She is wearing the field gray uniform of a Helfer, a female auxiliary, her collar indicating she was likely with a signals unit. Her blonde hair is matted with dust and pulled back in a severe bun. Her face is sharp, angular, and ghost white with terror. As the GIs disarm the prisoners, lining them up against a damp brick wall, Riley's medic's eye catches something. The woman, who stands ramrod straight, is trying not to put weight on her right leg. It's a subtle thing, a slight shift in her posture, an almost imperceptible wince as a sergeant shoves her into line. While the others stare with a mixture of defiance and resignation, her eyes are wide, darting, like a cornered animal. They lock onto Riley for a brief second, and he sees a depth of fear that goes beyond simple capture. Then he sees it. a dark, wet stain spreading slowly on the gray wool of her uniform skirt, high up on her thigh, a stain she is trying desperately to conceal with the position of her arm. He takes a step forward. She flinches, her whole body coiling like a spring. The battle for Breitenbach may be over, but for this woman and for the American medic who has just noticed her secret, another war is about to begin. The brewery cellar stinks of stale beer, damp earth, and fear. The captured Germans are herded out into the fading daylight, their hands clasped behind their heads. Lieutenant Miller designates the town's main church, the Ludgerikirche, as a temporary collection point for prisoners and a forward aid station. Its stone walls are thick, offering some protection from the sporadic artillery that still falls on the town, a final, spiteful tantrum from a dying army. As Riley helps shepherd the prisoners across the ruined market square, he keeps his eye on the woman. She walks with a stiff, painful gait, her face a pale, stoic mask that betrays nothing of the agony she must be in. Each step is a carefully controlled movement, a battle of will against the screaming protest of her own body. Inside the church, the scene is one of organized chaos, a surreal tableau of the sacred and the profane. Sunlight, thick with dust motes, streams through the shattered remains of stained glass windows, painting kaleidoscopic patterns on the stone floor. Pews have been pushed aside to make room for rows of stretchers. American and German wounded lie side by side, their groans and whimpers echoing in the cavernous space, a discordant liturgy of pain. The air is thick with the metallic smell of blood and the sharp antiseptic scent of sulfa powder. For Corporal Riley, this is his cathedral. This is his place of worship. He gets to work immediately, moving from man to man with an efficiency born of endless practice. Triage is a brutal calculus. You divide the world into 3 categories: those who will live regardless, those who will die regardless, and those you might be able to save. A GI with a gut wound gets a syringe of morphine and a quiet word. There is nothing more to be done. A German lieutenant with a shattered arm gets his bleeding stopped and his limb splinted. The uniform doesn't matter here. A wound is a wound. A life is a life. His hands, stained with the blood of a dozen men, move with a detached grace, cleaning, stitching, bandaging. Through it all, he is aware of her. She and the other unwounded prisoners have been sat on the floor against the far wall, under the watchful eyes of 2 guards from the 112th. She has positioned herself in the shadows of a large stone pillar, trying to make herself small, invisible. She sits rigidly, her back pressed against the cold stone, her hands clenched in her lap, concealing the spreading stain on her dress. But Riley can see the tremor in her hands. He can see the faint sheen of sweat on her brow, the unnatural pallor of her skin. She's going into shock. The wound is worse than he thought. He finishes applying a pressure bandage to a corporal from Charlie Company, pats the man's shoulder, and rises. He picks up a fresh canteen and his aid bag and walks toward her. The moment his path changes, her head snaps up. Her blue eyes, wide and luminous in the dim light, fix on him. Every line of her body screams tension. The 2 guards watch him approach, their expressions neutral. A medic is a medic. As he gets closer, he sees the details of her face. She can't be more than 22, 23. There are fine lines of exhaustion around her eyes. A small scar cuts through her left eyebrow. She is not a soldier in the way the men around her are, but she has seen the war. It has been etched into her. He stops a few feet away, careful not to crowd her. He keeps his movements slow, deliberate. He holds up the canteen. Wasser? He asks, using one of the few German words he knows, water. She says nothing. She just stares at him, her chest rising and falling in shallow, rapid breaths. Her gaze is not one of defiance, but of pure, unadulterated terror. It's a look he's seen before, but never this intense. It's the look of an animal that expects a blow. He kneels down, placing the canteen on the floor between them. He points to his Red Cross armband, then to his aid bag. Medic, he says, tapping his own chest. Ich bin Sanitäter. I am a medic. He gestures toward her leg. Verletzt? He asks gently. Wounded? The question hangs in the air. Her eyes flicker down to her own lap, then back to his face. A tear escapes and traces a clean path through the grime on her cheek. She shakes her head frantically, a tiny, jerky motion. 9, she whispers, her voice hoarse. 9. No. But her body betrays her lie. As she shifts, a wave of pain washes over her face, her features tightening into a grimace. He sees the blood now, a fresh, dark seepage through the gray wool. It's arterial. If he doesn't treat it soon, she will bleed to death right here on the floor of this desecrated church. He knows he cannot wait for permission. He reaches forward slowly, his hand open, intending to gently move her own hand so he can see the wound. The moment his fingers brush against hers, she recoils as if struck by lightning. A strangled gasp escapes her lips. She scrambles backward, pressing herself harder against the pillar, her eyes impossibly wide. 9, she cries, the word no longer a whisper, but a raw, pleading cry. Bitte, 9, please, no. He stops, confused by the sheer panic in her reaction. This is more than fear of a captor. This is something else, something deeper, something broken. The woman's cry slices through the low hum of groans and whispers in the church. A few heads turn. The 2 GIs guarding the prisoners shift their weight, their rifles held a little more tightly, their eyes narrowing on the interaction. For a moment, the entire tableau freezes. The American medic on his knee, hand outstretched, the German woman pressed against the stone, her face a mask of primal terror. Corporal Riley feels a flush of frustration mixed with confusion. He's trying to help her. Can't she see that? The red cross on his helmet, the bag at his side, these are universal symbols. But in her eyes, he sees no recognition of his role, only a reflection of his uniform, his weapon, his otherness. He is the enemy, and he is reaching for her. He tries again, his voice low and calm, the tone he uses for spooked horses or shell-shocked privates. It's okay, he murmurs in English, the words useless but the intent hopefully clear. I'm a medic, let me help you. He points again, more insistently this time, at the dark, spreading stain on her skirt. You're hurt, wounded, verletzt. He sees the dawning horror in her eyes as she understands his focus is on her injury, and more specifically, its location. Her hands fly to cover the spot, her knuckles white. She begins to shake her head again, more violently this time, her blonde hair coming loose from its bun. 9, 9, 9, she chants, the word becoming a desperate mantra. Riley knows he is out of time. Her pallor is worsening, her breathing more shallow. The blood loss is accelerating. Protocol, procedure, and basic human decency are screaming at him, but they are all drowned out by the single, overriding imperative of his training: stop the bleeding. There is no more time for gestures, for coaxing, for earning trust. There is only time for action. He makes a decision. It's a field decision, a brutal one, but a necessary one. He has to see the wound, now. He lunges forward. It is not an act of aggression, but one of medical necessity. In his mind, he is simply moving to access an injury, but to her, it is the ultimate violation. Her terror explodes. As his hands reach for the fabric of her skirt, she lets out a scream. It is not a cry of pain, but of pure, soul-deep dread. Nicht, bitte, tu mir nicht weh. Don't, please don't hurt me. The words tumble out, frantic and overlapping. She thrashes, trying to push him away, with surprising strength, her hands beating uselessly against his chest and shoulders. Riley ignores her struggles. He is focused on the single, bloody point of focus. His fingers find the thick wool of her uniform skirt. There are no buttons, no easy way to move it aside. He doesn't hesitate. He bunches the material in his fist and rips. The sound of tearing fabric is shockingly loud in the relative quiet of the church, a violent, percussive sound that makes even the guards flinch. The gray wool gives way, parting from the waistband down her thigh. And then, silence. A profound, ringing silence. The woman freezes, her struggles ceasing abruptly. Her body goes rigid, a choked sob caught in her throat. Her eyes are wide with shock and a dawning, catastrophic despair. She stares at him, her face utterly broken. For a split second, Riley is taken aback, stunned by the sheer force of her reaction. He had expected fear, resistance, perhaps even pain. He had not expected this soul-shattering terror. What in God's name had she been expecting him to do? Then he sees the wound, and the question is momentarily forgotten, replaced by the cold, professional assessment of a medic. It's ugly. A piece of shrapnel, probably from an American mortar shell, has torn through the muscle high on her outer thigh, just below the hip. It's a deep, ragged gash, and it's bleeding profusely, the blood pulsing in a sickening rhythm that tells him a femoral artery branch has been nicked. The shrapnel itself, a twisted shard of dark metal, is still embedded in the flesh. It's a $1 million wound if you're a soldier wanting to go home. It's a death sentence if you're a prisoner in the chaos of a collapsing front without medical attention. The entire church seems to be holding its breath. The other prisoners stare, their faces a mixture of anger and morbid curiosity. The American guards have taken a half step forward, their M1s no longer casual. Riley is acutely aware of every eye on him. He looks from the horrific wound back to the woman's face. The fight has gone out of her completely. She is limp, her head bowed, tears streaming silently down her face. She is waiting for the inevitable, for the violation she believed was coming all along. And in that moment, Corporal John Riley understands. Her fear was not of his medical treatment. It was of something far, far worse. He has just confirmed her deepest, most terrifying expectation of what happens when you are a woman and you are the spoils of war. He slowly raises his hands, showing her his empty, blood-stained palms. He holds up his medic bag, the red cross facing her. The ripped fabric of her dress lies between them, a testament to a terrible, profound misunderstanding. He has to fix this. Not just the wound in her leg, but the one he has just torn open in her mind. The moment stretches, taut and fragile as a spider's web. The air in the Ludgerkirche is thick with unspoken accusations, with the weight of her terror and his dawning, horrified comprehension. Corporal Riley holds his position, kneeling before her, his hands still raised in a gesture of surrender. His mind races. He had acted on instinct, the ingrained reflex of a medic to get to the injury, to stop the bleeding above all else. But in doing so, he had confirmed this woman's worst fears, fears likely cultivated over years of monstrous propaganda and the terrifying, whispered stories that race ahead of any advancing army. He sees it now. He wasn't just an enemy soldier, he was the monster from her nightmares made real. He has to rewind. He has to undo the last 30 seconds. But you can't rewind a war. You can only move forward. He lowers his hands slowly, deliberately, never breaking eye contact. He reaches into his aid bag, his movements now painstakingly gentle, as if handling unexploded ordnance. He ignores the wound for a moment, focusing entirely on her face. Her breathing is still ragged, a series of hitching sobs, but the thrashing has stopped. She is watching him, her expression one of utter desolation. "Shh," he says, the word a soft exhalation. "It's okay, okay." He knows she doesn't understand the English, but the tone is a universal language. It is the sound of comfort, of reassurance. He pulls a small sealed tin of sulfa powder from his bag and holds it up for her to see. Then he pulls out a sterile field dressing, the paper wrapper crisp and clean. He lays them on the stone floor beside him, a deliberate, transparent display of his tools. There is no menace here. This is the equipment of a healer. Her eyes follow his movements, wary and confused. The terror is still there, but a flicker of something else is beginning to dawn behind it. Uncertainty. This was not the sequence of events she had been led to expect. He wasn't supposed to be opening medical kits. Riley sees the subtle shift and presses the advantage. He needs to build a bridge across the chasm of language and fear, and he has to build it with actions, not words. He looks over at the other wounded prisoners. A few yards away, a grizzled German Obergefreite, a corporal, is sitting propped against a pillar, cradling a hand that has been mangled by shrapnel. He is bleeding sluggishly, his face pale. Riley looks at the woman, then points to the German soldier. "Moment," he says softly. He picks up his supplies and moves to the other man. The woman, Anya, watches him. Her entire world has been condensed into this single unfolding drama. She watches as the American medic kneels beside her countryman. She hears the medic's low, calm voice and the German soldier's grunted replies. She sees the American's hands, the same hands that tore her dress, now working with an incredible gentleness and precision. He cleans the German's wound, dusts it liberally with the yellow sulfa powder, and then expertly wraps it in a clean white bandage, fashioning a sling from a length of torn cloth. Throughout the process, he talks to the soldier in a soothing murmur, offering him a cigarette from his own pack when he is finished. The Obergefreite takes it with his good hand, nods his thanks, his expression one of grudging respect. The demonstration is a masterpiece of nonverbal communication. It says more than 1,000 words in a shared language ever could. It says, "See, this is who I am. This is what I do. I am not a monster. I am a medic. I help the wounded. It does not matter what uniform they wear." When he is done, Riley turns and walks back to her. He kneels once more. This time, her posture is different. The rigid terror is gone, replaced by a weary, trembling vulnerability. The fear is still present, but it is no longer absolute. He repeats his earlier actions, showing her a fresh dressing, a new tin of sulfa. He then pulls out a morphine syringe, a small collapsible tube with a needle on the end. He holds it up, taps his own thigh, and mimes an injection, followed by a sigh of relief, his face relaxing to demonstrate the easing of pain. Schmerzen weg, pain gone. He looks into her eyes, a silent question. This time, he will not proceed without her consent. The entire church seems to fade away, the sounds of suffering receding into a distant murmur. It is only the two of them, a medic and his patient, separated by a war, but connected by a wound. He waits. For a long moment, she just looks at him, her gaze searching his face, trying to reconcile the violence of his first action with the gentleness of her second. Tears well in her eyes again, but these are different tears. They are not tears of terror, but of confusion, of exhaustion, of a tiny, fragile spark of nascent trust. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, she gives a single shallow nod. The bridge is built. Permission is granted. The nod is all he needs. Corporal Riley moves with renewed purpose, but his movements remain deliberate, measured. He is acutely aware that the trust she has given him is a fragile, glassy thing, and the slightest wrong move could shatter it. He begins by preparing the morphine. He rips open the syringe's packaging with his teeth, carefully removes the cover from the needle, and finds a clean patch of skin on her uninjured leg. He looks at her, his eyes asking for final confirmation. She flinches slightly at the sight of the needle, but does not pull away. She closes her eyes and braces herself. The injection is quick, a small pinch, and he can feel some of the tension leave her body almost immediately as the powerful opiate begins its work. Now for the wound. He gently pushes the torn fabric of her dress aside, fully exposing the gash. It's deep, and still oozing dark blood around the jagged piece of metal. "This is gonna hurt," he says, knowing she won't understand the words, "but we gotta get this out." He opens a sterilized pouch from his kit and removes a pair of forceps. He shows them to her before he does anything else, letting her see the instrument. Her breath hitches, but she remains still, her jaw clenched. The work is ugly and intimate. He has to probe the wound, his fingers brushing against her skin as he gets a firm grip on the shrapnel with the forceps. She lets out a sharp, strangled cry of pain as he pulls, the sound muffled by her own hand, which she has pressed to her mouth. He pulls steadily, a sickening, grating feeling transmitting up his arm as the metal scrapes against bone. Then it comes free. He drops the bloody, twisted piece of steel onto the stone floor with a small clatter. It lies there, an obscene little artifact of the war's casual cruelty. With the shrapnel gone, the bleeding increases for a moment. Riley is prepared. He immediately packs the wound with gauze, applying firm, direct pressure. The woman's body is trembling, whether from pain, shock, or the release of adrenaline, he can't tell. He keeps one hand on the wound and uses the other to liberally sprinkle sulfa powder into the gash, a crucial defense against the gas gangrene that thrives in the filth of the battlefield. As he works, he finds himself talking to her, a constant low monologue. "Almost done now. You're doing great. Just a little longer. We'll get you fixed up. You're safe now. You're safe." The words are for him as much as for her. They are an affirmation of his own humanity in a place that seeks to strip it away. He finally applies the thick field dressing, wrapping it tightly around her thigh and hip, securing it with medical tape. The clean white of the bandage is a stark contrast to the grime and blood. The immediate danger is over. The bleeding is controlled. He sits back on his heels, the physical and emotional tension of the last few minutes draining out of him, leaving him feeling hollowed out. He looks at her. Her face is pale and tear-streaked, but the abject terror is gone. In its place is a profound exhaustion, and something else, a quiet, dazed gratitude. Her eyes, no longer wide with fear, are focused on his hands, on the bandage, on the now empty space where the shrapnel had been. He realizes in that moment the depth of what just transpired. Her initial, violent fear was a product of a world where humanity had been systematically dismantled. She had been taught to see him not as a man, but as a symbol, a rapacious conqueror, the Amis that Goebbels had painted as barbarians. His actions, first violent and then gentle, had forced her to confront a reality more complex and terrifyingly human than her indoctrination had prepared her for. He reaches for the canteen he had offered her earlier and uncaps it. He holds it to her lips. She hesitates for a second, then drinks, her throat working. The water seems to revive her slightly. When she is done, she pulls back, and her lips form a word, barely a whisper. "Danke." Thank you. The word hangs in the air between them, a small, miraculous thing. It is the first word that has passed between them that is not born of fear or command. Riley just nods. There is nothing more to say. He gathers his supplies, the bloody forceps, the discarded wrappers, and rises to his feet. Outside the shattered windows of the Ludgerkirche, the war rages on. The sounds of distant artillery still rumble like summer thunder. More wounded will arrive. More men will die. But here, in this dusty shaft of light on the cold stone floor, something other than war had just happened. An act of violence had become an act of healing. An enemy become a patient. And for Corporal John Riley, the medic from Ohio, and for Anja Schmidt, the German signals auxiliary, the vast, impersonal machinery of global conflict had shrunk to the size of a single, quiet, human moment. He turns to find his next patient, leaving her to her pain and her survival, both of them forever changed by an encounter that will never be recorded in any official history.